to try to put together a story that encompasses 32 years of baseball. And with that, so there's a few things that I've omitted, and a few things, but I do want to bring it down to a personal content because he was my grandfather. The picture that you see there, people often refer to him as the Bullet, Big Bullet. Yeah, there were a number of different names that people called him. I say the Bullet, Big Bullet, Bullet Joe, Joe Rogan, and Bullet Joe Rogan. We called him Papa. That was our name for him. We teased him about his skinny legs. We teased him about why we had to eat shredded wheat while he ate bacon and eggs. And the fact that he would always talk about fish stories and we never saw any fish. But anyway, he was my grandfather and he took me to the Monarchs games. We played ball together. I would be down in the dugout when the team was playing. I had no idea at that time exactly what baseball was all about or even just the position that he was in. But I think he just wanted to expose me, to that environment at an early age. And eventually I did grow into baseball, but it took a few years to do that. My grandfather was born in Oklahoma City in 1983. He died in Kansas City in 1967. And in between there, he had a career unlike most people. It was a career that most people dreamed about. And that's some of the things that I'll talk about. He was in the Army. When he didn't finish high school, he went to the Army. He had some problems at home. And he lied about his age, but they let him in. And he went in the 24th Infantry. And he played ball there, but he got out of the service and he re-enlisted with the 25th Infantry. And the 25th Infantry was known as the Wreckers. And there was a reason for that. The Wreckers was just an unbelievable ball team. They just about annihilated everybody that they played. To give you an idea, in about a 3-year period, they had, I don't remember the exact number, but it was about like 56 wins to 3 losses. This was just an unbelievable, so they had a tremendous amount of talent on that team. My grandfather resigned or got out of the service in 1920. He had played and had run across Casey Stengel. And Casey Stengel, as reported, was the one that recommended my grandfather to the Kansas City Monarchs, where J.L. Wilkinson was the owner. But the quote that I ran across from Casey, many people, I don't know how many, but many people think that my grandfather was the greatest ball player that ever played the game. And arguably, there are some disagreements here and there, but Casey Stengel said that he called Rogan one of the best, if not the best pitcher that ever lived. And coming from someone that had been around baseball all of his life, you have to put that, to me, that comes foremost in my mind. 1998, pinnacle year for my grandfather. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame by the Veterans Committee, which one of the members in there was Stan Musial. 2005, Oklahoma has a rich tradition of honoring athletes that were born there and have gone on to notoriety. They also honor athletes that played there, that also get some distinction. So in 2005, he was elected to the Oklahoma Sports Hall of Fame. And I went there for the induction ceremonies, and that is quite an affair. They do a tremendous job, a black tie affair. They do, it's a first-class service. There is an organization, Society for the American Baseball Research, called SABRE, and that's what they do. They research baseball and baseball players. And there is a dotted line from that Jerry Malloy conference, which is part of SABR, but it just deals with black baseball. And the chairman of that, Larry Lester, who did a lot of the groundwork in getting my grandfather elected to the Hall of Fame, makes no bones about it. He says, in my opinion, Bullet Rogan is the best baseball player that ever came out of the Negro leagues. And there's no question. He liked him so much that was his webpage. It was Bullet Rogan. Until he was elected, then I said, Larry, you got to drop that name off there. But just to give you some idea, just a few snippets of information about my grandfather when he was in his prime, 1924, 1925. He had a pitching record of 17-2, 17 wins, 2 losses. His batting average was .416. You know, that's unheard of. He had a slugging percentage of 515. You know, these are numbers that your average person just doesn't have playing baseball. He led the Negro Leagues in home runs with 13. And if you look at his entire career with the Monarchs, he had a semi-pro career, he had a professional career, and he also had an umpiring career. So those were the 32 years that he spent playing and or involved with baseball. But as a career for the Monarchs, he had 116 wins as a pitcher and 50 losses. He had a batting average, 338, 3.338. He had 45 home runs, 99 stolen bases. And he has a distinction. When they had the first Colors World Series, October 11th, which is my anniversary, 1924, which is not my anniversary, but he was the starting and the winning pitcher for the first Colored World Series, and he won 2 games in that series, and the Monarchs did win it. He managed the Monarchs until 1938, and then he umpired from 1939 to 1946. You know, during the time that he was at the Monarchs, he and Satchel Paige were on the same team. And I say this kind of with tongue in cheek, though. My grandfather talked a lot. He bragged a lot about players that he'd been with, played against, and all of that. And since he was a manager, and Satchel Paige was also, my grandfather was ending his career, and Satchel Paige was starting his. And he used to tell me that he taught Satchel Paige how to pitch. Okay, you know, all right, fine. I have no reason to argue with that. And I can see some validity in that if he's a manager and he's a pitcher. And managers and pitchers do have to coordinate and talk about strategies, different things, something like that. So there may be, he may have embellished it a little bit, but I think there could be some value in that. But one of the things that I heard growing up, Satchel Paige was always asked, who was faster, you or Bullet Rogan? All right, who's faster, you or Bullet Rogan? Finally, Satchel said, he says, I don't know, but there is one thing that I do know. You read this quote for quote. He is the onlyest pitcher I ever saw, I ever heard of in my life, was pitching and hitting in the cleanup spot. This was my grandfather hitting in the cleanup spot on a team that won the pennant. 3 pennants, 1923, 1924, and 1925. And it got to the point, when we talked about research, people came to the conclusion that there was so much information here, and there was so much talent that we need to write a book. And I didn't, there was 2 books that were written about my grandfather. One of them, in this saying here, The Monarchs, 1920 to 1938, featuring Wilbur Bullet Joe Rogan, the greatest ball player in Cooperstown. That was written by Phil Dixon, who did a lot of the research also. And he came to the conclusion is that Rogan wasn't the best pitcher, he wasn't the best hitter, he wasn't the best base stealer, or anything else, but there wasn't anybody that could do everything that he did as well as he did. And that is how we came up with the greatest player in Cooperstown. And the things that I have read too, I don't even know how long I've been talking. Got 1 minute? Okay. I'll tell you that too when you're over there. Just a couple of things that I learned, that I thought about, just growing up with my grandfather. I heard him and a lot of people talk about, and I mentioned it before about bragging. And until he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, I thought it was bragging. But after reading all the things that have been written and listening to all the people that had talked about him, it finally occurred to me that my grandfather was giving me a verbal legacy of what he did when he was going, because he never had a clue that any of this would ever be published or come to light. So that was what I came to, and I'm thankful that he did that. And the other thing that I learned was that although my grandfather never said it directly, but what it came down to was, don't let adversity stand between you and your passion. When I looked at the conditions that they had to go through, the bus rides, not knowing where they're going to sleep or eat or anything else, but one thing that really struck me, and one of the articles that I read, a bus would come into town and there would be a crowd waiting, great anticipation. There would be kids. And when the ball players come off the bus, some of them would be waiting for my grandfather to come, and he said the kids would come and they would just rush him, and they just wanted to hold him and grab his hand and walk with him to the dugout. You cannot manufacture that kind of charisma. You can't manufacture that love. So I can see where if I had that to look forward to every town that I went into, no matter what I was dealing with obstacle-wise, I would certainly overcome that and do it. And so that is what I learned from him, and I appreciate it. I thank you, Frank, for inviting me. I thank you all for coming. And,